Spring has arrived to the southern hemisphere. After a long winter with nothing much to harvest, I have been going out most mornings to collect the abundance of the season and make the most of this beautiful space where we currently live. There are lots of herbs sprouting at the moment, from nettles to mint and young echinacea leaves. In this video, I'm going to focus on two of the harvests, roses and mulberries, as well as how I use them in simple herbalism recipes. Roses are a wonderful hedgerow plant that can really take off in the right circumstances. I have no idea how long these particular roses have been growing here. In the past 5 years of living on this land, they have grown quite a bit and produce lots of flowers each spring. The rose bloom usually lasts about 3 weeks during the month of October. I have a preference for collecting the pink and red roses over the white ones as they dry so beautifully. The light pink flowers turn magenta, and the red ones turn crimson when properly dried. Spring and summer are the rainiest seasons here in this mountain range. I am so grateful for the rain and all the greenery after a long, dry winter. The extra humidity means I must take extra care when drying out the blossoms. That is why I avoid harvesting when it's raining. And as soon as I return to home base, I set the flowers and petals in the herb dryer. First, I took out the roses that I've already dried and stored them in a clean glass container. Then, I carefully arranged the roses I had just collected so that each has the space and airflow to dry. I will move these around every couple of days or so that the humidity between the petals can evaporate. While harvesting roses is a meditative and methodical process, which I only do around mid-morning, the mulberry harvest can happen anytime. These berries also come into season around October and sometimes as late as November, but unlike the roses, there's a lot of competition for this resource. Birds love the berries, deer like the leaves, and our Maritila likes them both. Luckily, there are several dozen mulberry trees in the forest, and plenty for everyone. So while these berries are so abundant, I like to harvest some for breakfast, snacks, and just to eat as I go. Mulberries look a lot like blackberries, but have a flavor all their own. White mulberries aren't as common. There are only 2 or 3 trees that I can reach. Their berries are smaller, but slightly sweeter. I know some people dry mulberries for medicinal uses later on in the year. Personally, I prefer to eat them fresh, store some in the fridge for our next snack or fruit salad, and use them in fermentation. For at-home fermentation, most people seem to prefer making kombucha. I have never had much luck with kombucha, but have had years of success with water kefir. Water kefir is also called tabikos, and is just so much easier than kombucha. Water kefir thrives on a fresh supply of sugary water. You can also feed water kefir sugary tea, tea with honey, or even fruit juice. My preferred method is to ferment the little kefir grains 1 or 2 days in sugary water. Then strain out the liquid and transfer it to a clean jar, and then add herbs and berries to the second fermentation. I feed the remaining grains in the first jar fresh sugary water, and the fermentation continues. The process takes just about 2 days. 1 day for the first fermentation and another day for the second fermentation. That is during the warmer months. In winter, the whole process is a bit slower. Just like kombucha, the water kefir creates an effervescent beverage, and the addition of homegrown herbs, and especially berries and flowers, adds a lot of flavor and natural yeast to the mix. Mulberries get used up pretty much immediately, while the roses are to be stored for the rest of the year for the creation of teas, herbal oils, and other products. So, let's go indoors where all of that action takes place. Welcome to my little herbal apothecary. Here I have jars of dried herbs that I've collected over the past year. And here I have all the jars of roses from last year that I really need to use up soon. In general, herbs lose their potency after about 6 months to a year. These roses still smell really nice, and I want to use them in a relaxing tea. Roses have so many medicinal properties. In aromatherapy, their essential oil is uplifting and helpful for relieving depression and anxiety. Rose is one of the most expensive essential oils there is, so I find it easier to make infused oil with the dried flowers, and tea for the other properties they contain. It is really important to only use organic rose petals and flowers, and ones that you are confident in their sourcing. Roses plucked from a bouquet are generally not apt for consumption. Roses are relaxing, uplifting, and warming, and also helpful for the menstrual cycle. I want to capture a bit of all of these properties in a nighttime tea for the days when I am feeling grumpy or suffering a bit from premenstrual syndrome. Alongside the roses, I also chose linden flowers, which are great for alleviating headaches, and lavender, which is very relaxing. I don't have much of lavender, so I decided to make a mix of half linden flowers and half rose petals with just a sprinkling of lavender on top. As I filled my bowl of herbs, the sun came out and I decided to take my herbal activities outdoors. You could keep this herbal mix in a jar to use as a loose leaf tea, but I wanted to make tea bags to make the whole process even easier for myself at night. I used these large tea bags from The Art of Tea and began filling each one with a wooden spoon. Once I had about 20 bags, I fit them all into a clean jar, labeled it, and put it back on my Herbal Apothecary shelf. And since not all the bags fit into the jar, I also made myself a pot of tea as I focused my attention to the garden. I need to be honest with you. At the end of last fall, I decided to abandon my plot and leave it to just do whatever. After years of trying to make this space productive, I felt discouraged by the minimal harvest and didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, I turned my attention to forming a garden of potted plants and microgreens around my front patio. The final effort, or so I thought, was to direct sow a few handfuls of fava beans last fall. Over winter, they grew extremely slowly, but I went away for a month and they matured and have since given us many bowlfuls of beans. As I harvested the fava beans, I noticed that there are tons of sprouts coming up. As far as I can identify, they are mostly zinnias, with a few cosmos and calendula sprouts too. It made me think, should I really abandon this garden, or rather let it be wild and maybe even productive? To really let these sprouting flowers have a fair shot, I needed to do a bit of weeding and decided to enlist my four-legged friend, Tila. I wasn't sure if she would try to eat the fava beans that I want to save for seed, so I covered the remaining plants with shade cloth. It has been quite a journey with this feral mare. 3 years ago, she wandered onto this land and would run away if a human tried to approach her. Now, she spends most of her time hanging out in our yard and even lets me brush her mane, if well compensated. It is so sweet to see her transformation and even count her as an ally. So I cut up an apple and persuaded her to enter the fenced-off garden. Keeping with the idea of letting the garden be wild, I also tilled up an empty garden bed and sprinkled over seeds that I have saved up from previous years. I really have no idea how this will turn out, but as I have so many seeds at my disposal, I thought it was worth a try. For the most part, I am focusing my plantings in the potted garden, which is just outside our house. It is so nearby that I never forget to water, and harvesting microgreens is as simple as walking outside the kitchen door. The other garden is about a minute walk away, and not too inviting at night when all I need is a bit of greenery to decorate the dinner plate. At the moment, I'm working on a video all about my process for growing microgreens on a budget. So stay tuned for that in the next few weeks. Until then, I wish you, as always, happy crafting!